Hey, so let's talk about something that's, well, absolutely critical, keeping your data safe. Now, you've probably heard about this thing called RAID, and maybe you even think it's the ultimate safety net for your files. But what if I told you it's not a backup at all, and that relying on it like one could be one of the biggest mistakes you ever make? Let's get into it and figure out why.
Seriously, just take a second and think about that. Everything you've worked on, all those photos, your most important files, gone, just like that. Losing data is this universal fear, right? It doesn't matter if you're running a huge company or just trying to protect your family videos, the stakes are incredibly high, which is exactly why we've come up with some pretty powerful ways to fight back.
All right, so the first line of defense that most people think of is RAID. And for good reason. It's a really brilliant piece of technology, and it was designed to fight one of the oldest enemies in computing, the simple fact that, eventually, hard drives fail.
So what is RAID anyway? It stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks. Basically, you take a whole bunch of physical hard drives, and you use this technology to trick your computer into thinking it's just one single giant drive. And why would you do that? Well, the goal is to keep your system up and running, no interruptions, even if one of those physical drives suddenly kicks the bucket. It's all about availability, preventing any downtime.
Now, RAID comes in a few different flavors or levels. The first concept to get your head around is called striping, or RAID 0. Imagine you've got this huge file you need to save. Instead of just writing it to one disk, striping breaks it up into little tiny chunks and writes all of those chunks to all of your drives at the exact same time. It's happening in parallel, which makes it blindingly fast. This is all about raw performance.
The next concept is mirroring, or RAID 1. This one's probably the easiest way to get redundancy. It's super simple. Whatever you write to disk 1, a perfect, identical copy gets written to disk 2 at the exact same time. So if disk 1 completely fails, who cares? The system just keeps on chugging using its perfect twin, disk 2. Zero interruption.
And that brings us to the most clever method of the bunch, parity. This is what makes things like RAID 5 and RAID 6 work. See, instead of making a full one-to-one copy of your data, which uses up a lot of disk space, parity uses a little bit of math. It looks at the data on your drives and creates this special calculated value called parity information. If a drive fails, the system uses that parity info plus the data on the good drives to perfectly reconstruct everything that was lost. It's a way more space-efficient way to get that redundancy.
So RAID sounds pretty amazing, right? It protects you from a drive dying, but this is exactly where we get to the single most dangerous, most widespread misunderstanding in the entire world of data protection.
Let's just be crystal clear about this. RAID is not a backup. Let me say that again. RAID is not a backup. This isn't just my opinion. It's a cold, hard, technical fact. RAID is for high availability. It's about keeping your system online right now. It has zero ability to save you from the most common ways people actually lose data.
Let's walk through a real-world nightmare scenario. Ransomware gets onto your server. It starts scrambling your files, encrypting everything. Now, your RAID system, it doesn't see a virus. It doesn't see an attack. All it sees are file changes, which to it look perfectly legit. So what does it do? It does its job. It diligently, instantly, and perfectly copies that encrypted garbage across every single one of your redundant drives. In the blink of an eye, RAID has helped the virus destroy all your data. You now have a perfectly protected, highly available set of completely worthless files.
And that's the real problem, isn't it? RAID gives you zero protection against the stuff that's most likely to happen. You accidentally delete an important folder. Whoops, RAID instantly deletes it everywhere. A software bug messes up a file. RAID happily copies that corruption to the other drives. A fire, a flood, a theft. All the drives are in the same box. They're all gone together. You have to get this. RAID only protects you from one very specific problem, a single piece of hardware failing. That's it, nothing else. So, if RAID isn't the real answer for safety, what is? Well, this is where we need to talk about the actual hero of this story, backups. A backup does a totally different job. Here's the difference in a nutshell. RAID is about availability. It's a right-now system that keeps you online. It has no memory of the past. A backup, on the other hand, is all about recovery. It's a point-in-time copy of your data. It's a snapshot from yesterday, or last week, or even last month. It's basically a data time machine. It lets you go back in time to before the disaster, whatever it was, ever happened. And just like with RAID, there are different ways to do backups. A full backup is the simplest. It copies everything, every single time. Yeah, it's slow and uses a ton of storage, but restoring your files is super fast and easy. An incremental backup is way more efficient.
It only copies things that have changed since the last backup, no matter what type it was. They're quick and save a lot of space, but restoring can be a pain because you might have to chain a bunch of them together. And then you have differential backups, which copy everything that's changed since the last full backup. It's a pretty good middle ground between speed and simplicity.
Okay, so we've got all these concepts. How do we actually put them together into a strategy that's, actually bulletproof? Well, luckily, the industry has come up with a framework that's basically become the gold standard for protecting data, especially now in the age of ransomware.
It's called the 3-2-1-1-0 rule. Here's what it means. You need 3 total copies of your important data. Those copies need to be on at least 2 different types of storage media. You need to have at least one of those copies stored somewhere else, off-site. But here are the 2 new parts that are so important today. That second one means one of your copies has to be immutable or offline, meaning it can't be changed or deleted even by a hacker. And finally, the 0 stands for 0 errors. This means you are regularly testing your backups to prove that you can actually restore from them. Because remember, an untested backup isn't a backup. It's just a wish.
All right, we have the building blocks. We have the plan. Now let's put it all together and actually build our data fortress.
First things first, you still use RAID. You need it for that day-to-day availability. But you have to use the right RAID for the job. For stuff that needs crazy high performance, like databases or virtual machines, RAID 10 is the king. It's super fast and it's safe to rebuild. For big file servers, where you just need tons of space, RAID 6 is your best bet because it can survive 2 drives failing at once. And for a simple boot drive, a basic RAID 1 mirror is cheap, easy, and gets the job done. And I have to stop here for a critical warning. You might see RAID 5 mentioned in older articles or forums. Please, listen to me. It is now considered dangerously unsafe for any new system. Here's why. With the massive hard drives we have today, rebuilding a failed drive can take days. And all that time, the other, older drives in the array are getting hammered. The statistical chance of a second drive failing or even just having a read error during that rebuild is now so high that it's just not worth the risk of losing everything. Just don't use it.
So here it is, your final checklist for a complete data fortress. You use the right RAID for day-to-day availability. You implement that 3-2-1-1-0 rule for true recovery. This means you've got a fast backup on-site for those quick, oops, I deleted a file restores, and you've got a secure off-site, unchangeable copy to save you from a real disaster or a ransomware attack. And the most important step, you test it. You prove that it works.
Look, at the end of the day, RAID and backups aren't fighting each other. They're partners. They do 2 different jobs to create one complete protection strategy. RAID keeps you running, backups let you recover. You absolutely, positively need both. So you have to ask yourself, is your data fortress built on the solid rock of a complete strategy, or is it built on the shifting sand of a single, misunderstood piece of tech?